people have been commenting on the variety of jumpers I had. So I thought I'd add a scarf to today. Quite a nice scarf, I'm sure you agree, reminding us of the autumn colours of better season in Melbourne. It also doubles as a mask, of course. Over these last weeks, we've been looking at the parables of Jesus, haven't we? Talking to us about the reign of God. And it's given us a sense of God's abundance. And in today's first reading and gospel, we have that abundance in practice. But let's just step back a fraction and set the scene and reflect on the power of Jesus' words. If you go to a really good movie, time can just go by without even realising it. But the gospel scene is one of a big crowd in open space. And they were so enraptured that they didn't seem to notice the time going by. In fact, from what we understand, even the kids didn't get bored. They didn't come and say, "Mum, we're hungry. Mum, can we go home? Mum, I'm bored." What was Jesus talking about, I wonder? Well, I think it's an obvious guess that it would be connected with his favourite topic of the kingdom. But also there must have been something about themselves to hook them in, I think, giving them a sense of self-worth and a really good sense of one another. All of a sudden in the gospel, the day starts to pan into evening, and you can imagine that the disciples sidle up to Jesus and say, "Jesus, it's getting a bit close to dark, and quite a few of these people have got a long way to go home. How about you finish up now and send them off to the neighbouring village so that they can get some takeaway and get some KFC or something nearby, because quite a few of them have got an hour or more walking home to get home. So how about you send them away?" And then we have that haunting phrase of Jesus, "Don't send them away, feed them yourselves." Oh. Feed them yourselves. That, of course, asks of us a couple of questions, doesn't it? Whom do you feed? And with what? And in these strained times, how are you going about feeding yourself? We are very fortunate, aren't we, having beautiful places to walk and good healthy food. And spiritually, how are you feeding yourself? These last couple of weeks in the daily masses times, we've had the readings from the prophet Jeremiah, and that's worth a flick through the prophet Jeremiah. He's down to earth sort of a fella. I rather like him because right from the very start in the first chapter, he says, no, not me, God, I'm not into that sort of stuff. Sound a bit familiar, huh? The parish team, as you well know, has tried over these many weeks to feed you with the weekly nourishment, with articles of interest, the parish newsletter, and the very appealing children's section. We attempt to offer you a variety. Please go back from time to time and have a look. I find it terrific to go back over the hymns and sing the songs. Drive Nadia a bit mad on a Wednesday or a Thursday, but each his own, huh? But now for the elephant in the room. As you probably know, this gospel passage from Matthew speaks to us about take, bless, break, distribute. The four parts of the second part of the Mass. But we don't have Mass. That's true, isn't it? And that hurts, or at least I hope it hurts. However, this absence, this Eucharistic fast, does give us a chance to ask some more questions. In particular, what have we learnt through this time of absence? Oh yeah, you do miss, and I miss, Holy Communion. But what else? Please examine yourself so that you see, am I becoming more of just a passive consumer rather than an active participant in the Eucharist? In these weird times of pandemic, how else are we called to feed them themselves, feed them yourselves, even feed them ourselves? I hope I'm not getting carried away, but I do see this lockdown time as an occasion for grace. For each one of us to reflect how, when eventually we do come back together, how can I more actively participate in the Eucharist? And that's for sure, it does include Holy Communion, of course. Please ask yourself, though, is the Mass for me more of a private affair, or is it a communal activity? Celebration of the Eucharist is always going to include both community and personal, isn't it? But where on the spectrum might you put yourself? More on the side of community, more on the side of private prayer? Do you need to do anything to make the celebration of the Eucharist more on the scale of the community? Something quite affirming that I experienced in that short period in between our two lockdowns, when we could celebrate small group masses in the chapel, and that was a deepening sense, I think, of ourselves as the body of Christ. Just one example of that is that when it came to the sign of peace, we were unable, of course, to physically handshake, hug or kiss, and people spontaneously turned to each other and smiled and waved. Now you might say, well, that's only a small step. Yes, indeed, but remember last week's final hymn, Make a Difference? Every small step is the start of a bigger journey. So, folks, to sum up all this, may I sincerely recommend to you two articles in the articles of interest. One is an article in This Week entitled Community Mass or Private Prayer and Private Eucharist, Community Mass versus Private Prayer or Private Eucharist. The other article you'll find in the middle of July entitled The Good Fruits of the COVID Eucharistic Fast. The Good Fruits of the COVID Eucharistic Fast. Finally, folks, do you notice that what we've been giving to you over these months now is really a form of the first half of the Mass, isn't it? The liturgy of the Eucharist. We have word proclaimed, and then we invite you to respond through the responsorial psalm, be that a song or a psalm, through the creed, through the prayers of the faithful. In other words, we're emphasising the dialogue nature of this first half of the Mass. Hey, a bit of homeschooling to finish with, folks. Thank you.